Hey everybody, Jochen Hayden here, and I'm going to be tackling a topic that I've been putting off for a while because it's so complicated and it's so vast. Um, Industry, in particular, Japanese industry and production. So this is going to be a basic overview of how it works. Okay, I'm not going to be talking about advanced production strategies, research and development, how you should plan your shipyards, all that stuff. That's advanced level stuff that we can talk about in a more targeted video. I'm just here to teach a new Japanese player what the heck all of this is and what they should be doing overall in their campaign, and so they can understand some basic stuff. So, to get started, the Japanese and the American or allied economies are very different. The allies have a lot of predetermined, preset things that cannot be changed. Their shipyards can't be updated. They can't increase or decrease production on anything on their own. It's preset. You cannot really adjust it. The Japanese, on the other hand, can basically adjust everything. You can build your shipyards. You can increase your dockyard sizes. You can increase or decrease your industry production output, all that. Okay? But there's a lot of moving parts to it, so I'm going to do my best to explain all of them. In this video, you may see a lot of transitions, okay? It's probably because I had to stop and take a breath or kind of reconfigure my screens to talk about a new topic. So just if you hear the music change and you see transitions, it's because we have so many different things I got to talk about that I have to stop and reset for each new thing. So the first thing I want to do is cover the four main resources that you need to be worried about as a Japanese player. And we can look at it from going up to the the intelligence tab and the industry resource availability. Here are the four most important things you need to worry about as a Japanese player: supply, fuel, resources, and oil. Okay? Those things determine everything. All right? Supply is what you use to build bases, keep your troops fed in the field, expand industry, rearm your ships. Fuel obviously is used for your ships and also for heavy industry. Resources go into light and heavy industry to produce supply and heavy industry points. And oil, of course, is used to make fuel. Now, on those four things, there are subcategories of industry resources that you need to be worried about. Okay, so now that we know what these ones are, I'm going to show you what some of the other ones you need to be concerned about are. And we'll do that by clicking exit and going up to the industry management button and opening that up. As a Japanese player, in addition to oil, resources, supply, and fuel, you need to be worried about manpower, heavy industry, light industry, refinery capacity, armaments production, vehicle production, aircraft engine production, aircraft production, research and development, naval shipyards, and merchant shipyards. Repair shipyards isn't really a resource per se. It's just gives you an idea of how many thousands of tons of ships you can actually repair or accommodate in your total repair shipyards. The Japanese have a total of 3 types of shipyards. The only one you will see on map are the repair shipyards. So what does all of this mean? Well, to help us understand what all of this means, we're going to go take a look at Tracker. Now, if you don't use Tracker, I strongly advise you to get on it because it's critical as a Japanese player, in my opinion, so you know what the heck you're doing. Okay? If you don't know how to use Tracker, I have a whole tutorial series on this. Just check my playlist, and I'll teach you how to download it, set it up, troubleshoot it, and use it. But without further ado, let's look at Tracker and why it's so important. Okay, so here's Tracker, right? So when you start off, you're always on the alerts page. You see nothing in here right now because this is a turn 1 Japan campaign, and there's been no alerts because nothing happened yet. What we're going to be looking at today is the industry data set and also the summary data set. Let's start with summary because there's some important key points you need to remember to make all of this make sense. Let's look at summary. So there are rules to each scenario that you play in this game. for all intent and purposes, we're going to be talking about scenario 1 today. Scenario 2 rules are the same. You may have a custom scenario where these are different, but I can't cover every single thing. We're going to talk about the big ones, scenario 1, scenario 2. So, this tells you what your economic multipliers are for each type of resource that you're going to be dealing with, okay? So, I'll briefly go through these and explain what they mean. So, for every resource center that you control, every day, assuming it's fully functional and not damaged, it will produce 20 resource points, okay? Every oil center you have produces 10 oil points. Manpower centers produce 5. Heavy industry requires 2 fuel points and 20 resource points a day per center to put out what it puts out. And what does heavy industry put out? It puts out 2 supply points and 2 heavy industry points per day when you feed in these things here. 2 fuel points and 20 resource points. Light industry, all it does is make supply. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't give you anything more than supply. So for light industry, it needs 15 resource points put in per day, and in return, it will give you 1 supply point out. Okay? Refinery oil. It needs 10 oil points per day per refinery, and what you get for that is 1 point of supply and 9 points of fuel. So what is a resource center? What is a refinery center? Let me show you what those are now, okay? Looking back on your map, when you mouse over a base, you'll see a number of things you'll see a bunch of things here, right? So for example, we're looking at heavy industry near the top third of this black call out. This shows you that at the base of Tokyo, there are 2,730 heavy industrial centers or factories, whatever you want to call them, currently here in Tokyo. The number in parentheses are the number of damaged and centers. So 0 is good. That means everything is fully functioning. Nothing is damaged. You'll also see here that Tokyo has a refinery capacity of 200. So what do we get out of refineries? Remember, you get one supply point and 9 fuel points per day, but you have to feed it 10 oil points, right? Okay, we'll keep going down the list here real quick just to so you get the gist. Light industry, 2240. So remember that if you want to know how much supply that's going to make, it's going to make 1 supply point per day. But in order to do that, you would need 15 resource points to make that per light industry. And you can see down here at the bottom, at Tokyo, we currently have 900,000 resource points. But if you think about it, you're burning so many resource points per day just to make 1 supply, you'll burn through your resources really fast. And that's going to kind of segue into the next point of our discussion. But that's how you understand what you got, okay? You got your factories and your resource centers or your production centers are going to be shown per each base, and you can look at some of them by like mousing over them, and that's what all these numbers mean. Okay, so as a Japanese player, what is your goal here? What are you supposed to be doing? Well, you need to feed your war industry to continue your expansionist goals throughout the world. All right, you need supply and you need fuel to wage war in China, to build new ships and aircraft, to take over the Dutch East Indies, to beat America. You need supply and fuel to do all these things. Well, how do you get them? Well, you make them. But here's the problem. Japan needs more than what it can make or what it can produce on its own as far as natural resources to fuel its war effort, okay? It does not make enough oil on its own. It does not make enough resources on its own to feed the refineries, the heavy industry, the light industry, all the things that it needs to do. It runs a deficit right from the start of the campaign. And your job as a Japanese player is to expand those things. And how do you expand them? Well, you conquer them. For example, and I'm going to show you what the deficit is when you start. You need oil. You need resources. Well, check it out. The Dutch East Indies has all that stuff, right? Miri, it has oil. Balikpapan, it's got oil. Check it out over here. Palembang, It's got resources, oil, and refinery capacity. So now I'm using a special map mod that kind of helps me see where the oil's at. So on my particular map mod that I use from Scasey, um, these light brown indicates like small oil production, and these dark or these black little splotches indicate heavy oil production. So that helps me really quickly determine where should I be looking to take stuff from first. You can now, in addition to oil, which you can get everything you need and then some from the Dutch East Indies down here, right? You not only need oil, but you need resources, and you don't make enough resources in everything you currently control to feed your needs. So where do you get them? Well, you conquest them. Look at places like Manila. It makes 40 resources, right? Let's look down here at like in some of these places down here in Mindanao. It makes 20 resources here per turn. So you find bases that have what you need, and you conquer them. And then after that, you have to transport all that stuff back to Japan, where the bulk of your production capacity is at. So that's, in a nutshell, what the Japanese player has to do in their campaign. You conquer oil and resources, and you bring them back to Japan to build them into stuff you need to wage war and continue your expansionist goals. I hope that makes sense. Now, it's not as easy as what I just said. You just go conquer stuff. Well, you're going to have to deal with the allies who are going to push back against you. They're going to try to protect all those things from you and take them away from you so that you starve. Now, let's take a look at something. I'm bringing up the tracker again, right? Hopefully you can see it on the screen. Let's go to the industry tab. So, this report, every turn, it will update, and it will tell you some important things. So, for heavy industry, this tells you that every turn, right now, assuming you change nothing in your capacity, you will create 6,950 heavy industry points. This is how much you currently have in your pool. These are nice even numbers right now, more or less, because this is turn 1, nothing's happened. Armament, which is another type of thing you'll need. You make 620 per day, and you have 20,000 surplus. Vehicles, you make 72 vehicle points per day with 1,000 surplus. Naval and merchant shipyards, those are having to do with ship construction, and I have a whole video on ship production in my tracker series if you're curious about these more specifically. Now, raw materials. This is a really important thing for you to know. This tells you how much supply you make per day, okay? As of right now, Japan, if you expand nothing and change nothing, you will make 24,000 supply per day. When you think about it, that's not really that much. You have to, if you want to build new factories, that costs a lot. If you want to rearm your ships, that costs a lot. If you want to build fortifications, shipyards, if you want to build ports, airfields, all that takes supply. Your troops in the field need supply. Every time they attack somebody, they burn supply. And this has to be replenished. And right now, as it sits, Japan only makes 24,275 supply per day. And you can see how quickly you would burn through that. In parentheses is what you currently own. 3.3 million supply. And not all of that is just sitting on a base. Some of it's in ships. Some of it's actually inside your land combat units. These are resource centers. Okay, now this is not how many resource points you make per day. This is how many resource centers you currently have, and each resource center gives you what? Let's find out. We go back to summary. Each resource center gives you 20 resource points per day. So if you want to know how much resource you make, it's 20 times that. Oil. This is how many oil production sites you have, and each one gives you 10. So you make 2,240 oil per day, which is very, very little. Okay, and this is how many oil refinery factories you have, and this is how many manpower centers you have. And again, to know what these give you, you have to go back to summary and look at the rules here for economic multipliers to know what each one does. All right. Okay, let's continue on. So now that we know what this stuff means, let's look here at the warnings. So this tells you what your constraining factors are right now. So right now, this is telling us that per day, if you want to break even on everything you have, you would need 811 more oil centers to break even on your current capacity. Okay, does that make sense? So if we want to make enough fuel to uh, fuel our ships at the current rate of use, if you want to make enough fuel to keep our heavy industry going, you would need to add 811 additional oil centers to meet that capacity. You don't have them right now. You as a Japanese player need to go and get them. And the Dutch have them. The Chinese have a few. Different places on the map produce these things, but the bulk of the ones you will need are in the Dutch East Indies, a little bit in Burma, etc., etc. This tells you how many resource centers that you would need to break even per day. Right now, we're short 125. That would not take too much effort to get. I could tell you, like down in the Marshall Islands, Ocean and Nauru Islands alone probably make almost all that. So resources aren't hard to get. And then you also, one thing that we're short of is oil refineries. So not only do we not have enough oil, we don't have enough oil refineries to make enough fuel to fuel our needs indefinitely. That doesn't mean that we're going to run out of fuel tomorrow. It just means that every day we're going to run a deficit, and that deficit's going to eat in to what's in your pools for oil and fuel and supply, right? So these are what we need to work on as your Japanese player to. Oh, sorry about that. Don't need that. This is what you need to work on to expand to keep pace with your economy. So since we're looking at Tracker, there's another very important screen that I use as a Japanese player when I play Japan religiously. It is awesome, and you need to know it. So in here, you go over to the War in the Pacific chart. And here you have this totally awesome, amazing infographic that shows you everything you need to know about your current industry and how things are working. I'm going to explain this to you because it's important that you know what it is. Over here are what's in your pools for these different types of resources. One is resources themselves, oil, fuel, supply, heavy industry points, and manpower. All of these things are needed for different types of production depending on what it is you're trying to make. All right? So let's start here. I'm going to walk you through this whole thing so you understand what you're looking at. And this updates every day. Every turn you run, this will change based on what your current capacities are. Okay. So this tells you how many resource centers you have. Number to the left are how many that are good. Number in parentheses are how many that are damaged or not producing. So we know based on the rules of our scenario that each resource center gives us 20 resources per day for a max total of 276. So now those resources get fed into two different places, light industry and heavy industry. And this will show you how many of each type go into each thing. So our light industry capacity currently burns up 140,000 resources to do what it does and 139,000 to do what it does in heavy industry. And this shows you how many of each type of resource you need per day. This number here tells you what your deficit is. Okay? So every day, assuming nothing changes with our production, you burn a deficit of 2,500 resources a day. And eventually that will eat into this number here until you have zero. When you run out of resources, these things don't work anymore. So from here, light industry produces right now with the current amount of factories we have, will give you supply here. Heavy industry gives you supply here, and also oil refineries give you supply. So these three production systems here give you your total amount of supply per day. Okay, this is supply surplus. So after all of your needs are met, every day, if you spend no supply, everything's sitting around just being hunky-dory, your supply count goes up 24,000 a day. I'll tell you right now, as a Japanese player, you're going to burn through that really fast once you get your war going. Let's look at oil centers. So think of these as like oil fields or like little derricks that pump the oil out of the ground. That's what these represent. You currently own, as a Japanese player, 224 oil centers, right? Which is pretty small. Each oil center gives you 10 oil points right here. Do you see that? The oil that you have is fed into an oil refinery, right? And it takes, for every oil refinery, 10 oil points to run it. So a deficit, or it takes 10,350 oil points per day for the refineries to run at full capacity. This red number tells you how much deficit of oil you have every day. So if you don't do something about this, you will burn up your oil. Here, let's get a calculator and do some math. let's check this out. Okay, so we currently have 3 million and some odd oil, right? If we burn a deficit of 8,000 oil points per day in 398 days, assuming nothing changes, you will have 0 oil. Okay, does that make sense how this is working? Does this help you understand kind of why it's important that you as a Japanese player deal with this situation? All right. Continuing down, your oil refinery gives you both supplies. So for every oil refinery you have, you get 1 supply, and then you get 9 fuel. There you go. You can see it right here how this works. So from here, the fuel gets used in 2 places. One is for ship use, and one is for heavy industry use. The heavy industry use is easy to calculate because it stays constant as long as your heavy industry quantity is the same. Now, the factor here that could really make this go down fast is your ship usage. So the tracker does its very best to approximate how much fuel your ships are burning per day with their current assigned speeds and orders. And again, it's approximate. So right now, all the ships on the map that Japan has with the orders that they have at the speeds that they're set to will burn about 14,000 tons of fuel per day right now. Now, if you start full speeding your convoys all over the place and you set up 50 more convoys and you send them all out and they're all running full speed, this number is going to skyrocket, okay? So this deficit doesn't look too bad, right? Oh, we have 4.5 million fuel. What is that, 1,000 days? Yeah, it is about that right now if nothing changes. But once you start using up your ships and refueling ships and you start transporting fuel around places, or you have a fuel convoy that gets sunk, all that fuel is lost, right? Well, you can see how this number would go down really fast, maybe even faster than the supply. So it is critical as a Japanese player that you fix this problem, and you fix it by picking up oil refineries. Where do you get those? You go down to the Dutch East Indies and you take them. So that's how all that works. So this chart is really awesome as a flow chart to show you what's going on. Let's continue. I know this is a lot, but you got to know these things. So there's another very important type of resource that you have, and it is heavy industry points. Okay, your heavy industry not only makes supply, but it makes heavy industry points, and the heavy industry points feed the production of all those other things that I showed you. So your aircraft production burns what is it? It burns heavy industry. Engine production burns heavy industry. Vehicles, armaments, naval yards, and merchant yards all burn heavy industry. And this is per day, okay? It burns 11,286 per day, assuming you change nothing here. Now, if you go start expanding all this stuff, this is going to change very quickly. Because this number here represents your surplus per day. So right now, you're running a surplus of heavy industry points, but not by much. And there's another cost here. For every pilot you have in the pilot training program, they require 5 heavy industry points, and that is subtracted from your pool at the first of every month. So right now, if Japan's training 4,100 pilots come January 1st, 1942, instantly 20,545 heavy industry points will be taken away from your surplus. All right, and that's technically okay because based on this chart, assuming we make no additions or subtractions from this stuff, you are going to run a surplus of 2,600 heavy industry points per day. But again, that's going to change when you start training more pilots. You want to start building more factories. You're not happy with your shipyard production, so you want to expand these. Well, guess what? That's going to cost you more heavy industry points per day. So before you know it, if you don't expand your heavy industry to keep up with all this stuff, you're going to run a deficit. And when you run out of heavy industry points, your economy stops as far as production is concerned. No more ships, no more planes, no more engines, no more replacement parts for your tanks and your guns in the field for your troops. That all comes from heavy industry. So now you see this twisted web that we're dealing with, right? So let's also talk about the Manpower pool, since it's on here. Manpower pool is basically these manpower centers give you manpower, okay? And manpower is used to go into your pilot training. It goes into new unit construction. It goes into building new squads, new tanks, new guns. All that stuff takes manpower to produce, okay? Now, I will tell you this, as the Japanese player, you should never run into a manpower shortage until maybe way late in the war. If you get that far and the Americans are bombing your cities and taking out manpower, even then you will have accrued such a massive manpower uh, uh, surplus that it's not going to be an issue. So manpower isn't too critical. You should never be spending your supply expanding manpower centers. You don't need to worry about manpower so much. It's just kind of there. Let it do its thing. You don't really have to mess with it. Okay, so I've been talking for a long time here. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to transition into the next topic, but I hope you understand this chart and how it all works and how the Japanese economy is a big circle of things, right? And it all is interconnected, and you need to manage this, and you need to deal with these red things because these red things will come and get you real quick. So the next thing I want to talk about is the actual industry and how it works and how to expand it and the ramifications of that. So we're going to transition back into looking at the in-game stuff, and we'll talk about that next. Okay, we're back. Now I've had a chance to refocus my chi, drink some water, have a beer, take a breath. I'm ready to talk about the next thing. So at this point, the next big topic I want to discuss is this industry. What is it called? Industry management tab. This is such a critical window for the Japanese player. So let me basically explain what this is. So these are all of those additional resources that you need to know about from the manpower, the armament, vehicle, engines, all that stuff, okay? So at the top is how many are currently in your pool. This is how much your max production is of these things. All right, now you have to be careful. Some of these are per day and some of these are per month, okay? So it can be a little misleading. You got to be very careful about that. Over here is disabled production, shut off production, so on and so forth. And this is how much it actually produces. Down here shows you the supply required for each thing and the different requirements for the resource that's being produced. For example, for heavy industry, we have a max capacity production of 13,900 per day. We're actually producing 13,900 per day because all the factories are turned on and none of them are damaged, okay? It requires no supply to do this particular resource, but it takes 13,900 fuel per day and 139,000 resources per day, okay? And what do you get from that? You get supply of 13,900 in addition to heavy industry points. Let's look at here, let's just scroll over here to vehicles. We have 1,000 vehicle points. Now, these are not vehicles, these are vehicle points, and I'll explain what that means in a little bit. We have 1,000 vehicle points in our pool. We make 72 per day, right? We are producing 72 per day right now. The only thing this takes to make is 432 heavy industry points, of which we currently have 50,000, all right? Engines. These are aircraft engines, and now this is just a giant pool of like 30 different engine types. That's a whole nother video on Japanese aircraft production and R&D, but we have 1,500 various engine types in our pool. We are making up to 649 per month, okay, max production. We are in fact making that many, and it is taking 7,974 heavy industry points per month, not per day, per month. So you kind of have to know what each one of these things is. All right. So on and so forth. I hope this all makes sense, right? So let me show you what happens when you mess with stuff here. So let's do this. Turn off all production. Watch what happens to these numbers, right? So now we've shut down all production across all industries, top to bottom. We are producing nothing now. Now, you notice here, shut off production It went down to, it went up to 13.9. Actual production went to 0. Now here's one thing you cannot shut off is manpower. Manpower is always running whether you like it or not, and that's fine. There's no reason why it can't. The only thing you can do for manpower, for example, is just shut off the repairs, which, by the way, I strongly advise you to do because we're going to talk about repairing and building in a little bit and why that's important. But because you know the Japanese have more manpower than they can ever use, if these ever get damaged, you're wasting supply to fix them. So what I do at the beginning of every campaign that I would play as Japanese is go in here and manually turn off with this button here, the repair button for all Japanese manpower stations because you don't need these repaired. But let's say you have a bombing raid or a bombardment, whatever, it damages the manpower center at the base. Every damaged manpower center requires 1,000 supply to repair. But why would you want to waste that supply for a resource that you have unlimited, for all intent and purposes, unlimited amounts of? So if you're a Japanese player, the first thing you should do in this industry thing on turn 1 is turn every one of these off because you don't need to fix them if they get damaged. You have more than you need. Look how many there is too. This could take quite a while, right? I'm just clicking it as a nervous thing as I talk through this video, right? All right. Now, there may be other things you do want to repair, and we'll talk about that too. So one thing you have to remember is you as a Japanese player can expand your industry with the exception of a few things. You can expand it all. So let's say you want to, we'll turn on production, right? So production's back on. We're currently making 620 armament points, but because of whatever reason you may want to think about, you want to expand the capacity at Fukuoka to 100 instead of 90. All right, this is how you would go about doing it. You would click on the actual industry you want to adjust at the base that you're at. You click it here. All right. Now over here is where you can expand the actual industry. So you can do it by 1, by 10, or this max button, which works a little wonky. So for us, we want to get to 100, right? So we would click this. What that does is now it changes it's going to add an additional 10 production capacity to this industry, but there is a cost to that. For every expansion of every expansion slot you want, it costs you 10 heavy industry, 10 manpower, and 100 supply per unit of expansion, okay? And that's just the upfront cost, all right? That's not the total cost. That's the upfront cost. So if we want to expand Fukuoka to 100 armament points per day, we click and we get to 10. Now watch what happens when we hit expand now. Instantly, manpower is spent, heavy industry is spent, and 1,000 supply at the base is now burnt. Okay, but that doesn't mean that we're making 100. We're making 90 still, and we have to repair that industry. So when you expand it, think of it as the engineers coming in and setting up the blueprints and laying down the foundation to build the factory up bigger. Okay, that costs that amount up front. 10 heavy industry, 10 manpower, 100 supply, just to have the right to expand it. And then from there, you have to spend 1,000 supply per day for every unit of the factory that you repair. So again, what does it mean when it's in parentheses? It means it is damaged and needs to be repaired. So if we look at armament production here, you see that we now have a maximum capacity of 630, but disabled is 10. We have to enable that. So we're still only making 620. So now it's going to take us 10 days to get this up to 100, and it's going to cost you 10,000 supply to do it. Okay? Every day at each base, you will rebuild 1 point of damaged industry, assuming you have 10,000 supply minimum at the base. If this base had 9,000 supply, it will not expand. It will not repair that until you have 10,000. That's a game rule. It's set in stone, and you can't adjust it, right? So I'm going to write this down because I'm going to run this turn later, and I want you to see what happens as we do stuff. So Fukuoka armaments. Now remember, you just spent 1,000 supply and 100 manpower in heavy industry, and on top of that, now you have to spend 10,000 supply over 10 days to get it there. So you have to be very careful and deliberate with your planning on industry. And it may be difficult for a new player to kind of plan out strategies. So what I recommend to you is that you do these in very small bite-sized moves, okay? Don't be trying to expand your armaments at Fukuoka to 1,000, because here's the thing. If you don't turn this repair off, it's going to keep going until it's fixed, and it's going to burn a lot of supply. Remember what I told you about how much supply Japan makes per day? 24,000, right? Unless you expand certain things. So right off the bat, this is going to eat 1,000 supply from your surplus every day. So now instead of making 24,000, you're only making 23,000 because 1,000 is going to go into this for 10 days to build it up. All right. At any point, if you decide, you know what, I think I screwed up here. I don't want to expand this anymore. I should not have done that. All you have to do is turn off repair, and it will no longer attempt to restore these. Okay. One other thing you need to be very careful about is that once you make this change, you cannot go back. All right. Once you hit these numbers, you can't dial them back. So you want to be very careful when you go through and expand your factories or whatever it is, and do it slowly and save regularly. I would save every time you make a change to your industry, so that in case you kind of get punchy and you start doing this, right? You're like, oh crap. Now I just committed 110,000 supply to expanding this factory to size 200. I didn't want to do that. Well, you can't take it back. Only thing you can do is now you have to micromanage it, and you turn on repairs until you get it where you want, then you turn it off. But then what if you forget? Well, over 110 days, you're going to burn 110,000 supply on this thing you weren't even trying to do. So you got to be very careful when you're clicking these buttons. When you're going through here, right? Before you click expand, you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe I need to think this through, because I don't. That's okay. Let's start over again. I just wanted to do 5, okay? And you click expand. Be very careful before you click expand now, because there's no coming back for any of these. Okay, so some of you may be asking, well, why would I want to expand armaments or vehicles or engines? Like, what does that mean? Okay, as the Japanese player, you're ultimately responsible for the production of everything. The tanks, the guns, the squads of infantry, the engines on the planes themselves, the ships. You control all of that. And some of these things like armaments and vehicles cost stuff. Right? So let me show you how you can kind of figure out what things cost. Right. So let's say you have an army unit out here, right? And during combat, it loses all of its 75 millimeter guns, right? And you want to replace those. You want to build this SNLF unit back up and give it back all its guns so it can be more combat effective. Well, that's going to cost you. And here's how you can figure out how much that will cost you. Right. So to figure out how much that costs to fix that, you go over to the aircraft, troops, and vehicle database, right? Then you click on the type of thing that you're trying to fix. In this case, it was a piece of arty, right? It was a gun. So you would click artillery. Then you find the actual gun that you're trying, or whatever the weapon is that you're trying to replace in that unit. All right? And again, this is only for Japanese. Americans do things a little bit differently. You find the device, which was was it a 75 millimeter field gun? Let's call it a 75 millimeter field gun. Here it is. All right. So what you do is, this is how you can determine how much it will cost to replace it. All right. You look at this thing and you look at the load cost. So for a field gun, this costs a load cost of 9. So to replace this just one gun, you need 9 armament points and 9 manpower points to replace just that thing. And on top of that, once that device is sent to the unit, it costs 9 supply points to send it to the unit. So you're actually looking at 27 points of things to make one field gun. So it's not one armament point is one gun. It's 9 armament points make one gun. So if you expect a lot of loss in the field, if you expect to lose a lot of anti-aircraft guns, a lot of artillery in the field, you're going to want to get ahead of that and start building up your armaments and your vehicle stuff early on to get ahead of that. Now, if you find in your campaign that you're just blazing through the allies and you're not losing a lot of stuff, what you can do is you can go in and shut off production for a while and save all those points, save the heavy industry, save the supply until you really need to start it up again if you find that you're building a big surplus of stuff. All right, for infantry squads, it costs, like for let's say this infantry squad, if you want to replace this one, it's going to be a load cost of 11, so 11 manpower points and 1 armament point. That's how it works for actual like infantry units. It's manpower plus 1 armament for each device, plus the supply cost for each device. Okay, for vehicles, it costs, let's say you're Japanese and you want to replace a Type 95 tank that was lost in one of your tank units, right? A light tank. This vehicle has a load cost of 10. It's going to cost you 10 vehicle points, 10 manpower points to build the device. And once the device is pulled from the pool and put into your unit that uses it, it will cost you 10 supply points. So I hope you're kind of understanding how all this stuff is interconnected. All right. It can get kind of complicated. So now you understand what all these things do, right? You know what the armaments are for. You know what the vehicle points are for. Engines and aircraft are another story. We will get into that in more depth in a future video. It's a whole nother situation. But you can also go in here and change production, right? So at Maebashi, well, actually, let's go back. At Maebashi, these are all the things that this base is producing, right? A lot of this is R&D, research and development, which we'll talk about in another video. But some of these are active aircraft that are being produced. So let's look at Maebashi. And you can sort by all kinds of different things here, right? I sort by base right now, and we'll find Maebashi. And we know right now that this base is producing all these things. If it's grayed out, it means it's research and development. Resources, you can't do anything but repair. You can't add to them, because think of resources like rice paddies, right? They're just there. You can't really mess with that. Or resources are like an ore mine or gold mine or whatever. Manpower, same thing. You can't expand these. But the things in yellow are things that you can adjust. At Maebashi, we're currently producing a total of 56 A6 M20s per month, right? So about almost 2 aircraft a day. But let's say I want to get this up to 100 a month. I want Maebashi to produce 100 a month. I'm not saying that's what you should do in your campaign. You need to look into this more, but I'm giving you an example. So I would click on this, and I would click these buttons up here until I got it to what I wanted. You have to do some math. So what's 100 minus 56 is 44. So I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, you're going to have an upfront cost of 4,400 supply, 440 heavy industry, and 440 manpower. That is just the cost that you got to eat right up front. Okay. So now I'm going to hit expand now. So now Maebashi can eventually produce 100 aircraft a month of this type. But there's a catch. We have to spend 44,000 supply to build it up. All right. And that's going to take you 44 days. You only get 1 per day. But there's another problem. Look at Maebashi. Remember what I told you? What the minimum amount of supply is at the base to expand? Or to repair damaged stuff? It's 10,000. So right now, if we do nothing here, Maebashi will never expand these, because you don't have enough supply there to do it. All right? That's kind of important, isn't it? So how do you fix that? And that's why this screen is so important. It tells you everything you need. It tells you how much it costs to do it, right? So it's going to cost us 1,008 heavy industry points per month to build 100 of these aircraft. No, I take that back. That's how much it costs right now. It's going to cost you more when this is expanded all the way. That's just how much it costs at this moment. It'll cost even more when it's at 100. But we don't have enough supply to even upgrade this thing. So we're going to click on the base. We'll click here. And we're going to go here and manually increase the supply that base is going to get. So every time you click this up, the base will attempt to store times 3 of this. So if I want 10,000 supply at this base, I would set this to at least 4,000. So that will the base will now attempt to stockpile 12,000 supply per day, and it will grab it from wherever it can. More than likely Tokyo, since we have a huge surplus of supply in Tokyo. Or it'll source the supply from all over the place to make sure Maebashi has the requested amount, in which case 12,000. So now every day you'll have at least 10,000 supply at Maebashi, and 1,000 of those supply will be expended to increase your A6M20 building capacity by 1. So again, you can see how expensive it can get to expand stuff. So you need to be very deliberate when you start planning out how you're going to expand stuff. The purpose of this video is not to tell you how to expand stuff. Like, I'm not giving you strategies on what you should build and what you shouldn't. That's a more complicated topic, but I will give you some help with that later on. I'm just showing you how to do it, right? So now you know that now every day, now that we're fixing this, we're eating into our surplus of supply again. Another 1,000 supply is going to get spent, and it's not coming back. So it's so important that you guys plan your industry properly. You're going to, at some point, you're going to want to add supply capacity, right, by expanding your light industry or heavy industry. But again, that costs money too. So you have to spend supply to make supply, and it's a very diminishing return. So if I wanted to get 10,000 supply per day here, I would need to expand all my light industries quite a bit all over the place. But how much supply are we talking about here? We would need to go up 660 light industry upgrades or expansions to get us to 10,000 supply per day. But what is that going to cost you to do it, right? If we go and expand a bunch of light industry all over the place, we're now on the hook for 660,000 supply expended to get you to 10,000 supply per day. So what is your break even? Now you're going to have to bust out your calculator and figure that out. So let me explain. So we know that it's going to cost, if we wanted to expand light industry in Japan up to 10,000, it's going to cost you 660,000 supply per day, or total over however many days it takes you to expand that, right? But what are we getting out of it? We're getting an additional, what? I'm terrible at math in my head. 9,340, 600. Oh, how silly. Okay, we're adding 660. I knew this. I wasn't great at math in school. We're getting 660 more supply per day. So what's our break even? So think about this. 660,000 supply spent to increase our supply an additional 660 a day. It would take 1,000 days to break even on this investment. Is it even worth it? I don't think so. So these are the things you need to think about before you start expanding your industry. You have to look at the cost to do it and see what you get out of it. To me, spending 660,000 supply to get us up to a light industry production of 10,000 supply per day, this is not a worthwhile investment. I don't want to wait 1,000 days for this to start paying me back. And don't forget, in addition to the supply that you got to spend to do this, now this light industry is going to start eating more resources per day. It already eats 140,000 resource a day. When you get up to 10,000, that number goes up even more. So now you have to start transporting even more resources back to Japan from all your possessions all through the Pacific to feed your light industry. So do you see how many layers to this industry that there is? You have to think about all this stuff before you go hog wild, changing things around, adding production, all that stuff. It's gonna be a problem for you. All right. Let me show you something else you can do. You can also change what is being made. So now you can't change an aircraft factory into an armaments factory, but you can change the type of aircraft that it's making. Same for engines, right? These Nakajima HA-34, you can change it to one of these, right? You can't like change it into armaments factory or something else. The only exception to that are these armaments factories. You can swap them between vehicle and armaments, or armaments to vehicle. Does that make sense? Here, let me show you what I mean. So I can change armament to vehicle, and I can change a vehicle to an armament. But again, watch what happens when you do that. Look at Kobe. Okay, let's say, oh, you know what? I have too many vehicle production. I need more armaments. I'm gonna switch it. Okay. Okay, great. Well, you just did it. Now let's see what happens when you do that. We just switched it to armament. Well, guess what we just did? We just completely destroyed the factories. They had to be rebuilt. 7,000 supply right there. Please and thank you. Was it worth it? Now I'm thinking it wasn't now, because now we have to start all over again. Now we're producing 0 there until we build Kobe back up, and it's going to cost you 7 days and 7,000 supply to get this back to size 7, assuming you have 10,000 supply at the base. So again, be very careful, be very deliberate before you start clicking buttons. Save often, because you may find yourself clicking the wrong thing and getting kind of suckered into this. Now I'm screwed, and I can't just make it go back. Watch, I can't just switch it back to vehicle factory, right? Well, guess what? It's still broken. You can't go back on this screen. You got to be very careful. So that's one thing I want you to know. I want to show you one last example of being very careful with what you're doing. So let's go back to Meibashi, right? Currently, Meibashi's producing 35 Ki-27 Nates a month. Well, I'll tell you right now, this is an obsolete aircraft type. We don't need these. I don't want any more Nates. We have plenty of them. These are doing me no good. I want to make zeros here. Okay, well, we can do that. See that? This is, I'm clicked on the industry for Meibashi that was currently a Nate factory, and I can go here and I can pick a new aircraft model to produce. In this case, I would like to make the 0. Okay. Okay, well, you just did it. But here's a problem. It's all disabled again, right? And you have to build these back up. And what's it going to cost you? 24,000 supply. Now, in addition to that, now you got to make sure you have engines for this. You have to make sure. Now we're going to have another issue with supply here. Do you see what I'm saying? And once you click it, you can't go back. Well, maybe you can. Well, here, let's make sure that you can. I don't think you can. Where's the Nate? Yeah, see? Now I clicked it. Now I lost even more. So you cannot go back when you click these buttons. Once you click it, it's over. So now look at 2 misclicks have caused me. I went from producing 35 Nates a month to clicking on a 0, having it disabled, and going, oh man, I didn't want to do that. I want to go back. Well, now I'm down to 16 Nates a month, and they're all disabled. And now I have to build up from scratch. So please be careful when you click on this screen. I cannot stress it enough. You will jack something up if you don't slow down and be very deliberate. Save often. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, get some water, and then we'll finish up this video. Whew. Okay, we're back. I had a drink of water, took a break, did some stretches. So what I'm going to do now is do one quick practical example to show you how all this stuff works and how Tracker tracks what you do. So you know we've already expanded the armaments at Fukuoka, and we also had to increase the quantity of supply at the base to make sure that we would have enough to conduct the actual expansion. So let's also do 3 little things here. So I'm going to increase the heavy industry at Osaka. I'm only going to do it by 1 because I'm only going to run 1 turn. So right now, Osaka is producing 3,900 heavy industry and 3,900 supply for us every turn. So we're going to click here, increase it by 1. We're going to have to spend this money here. Okay. Notice how these things didn't change yet, right? Because we haven't built it yet. This needs to be fixed. We're also going to do Tokyo. We're going to increase it by 1. Expand now. Again, spending money up front. And then we're also going to do, let's see here, Yokohama. Oh, wrong button. Yokohama. We're going to, dang it, I keep doing that. heavy industry, expand now. So we spent the money up front, and we're going to have to spend additional 1,000 supply for each one of these. But notice how they're in parentheses now, right? Okay. Now, also take a look at the base thing. You'll notice at the top, in the center, it says heavy industry 23, 2730, and a 1 in parentheses, which means it's a disabled thing that needs to be repaired. And that should be done over the next turn. Again, Maebashi, see the zeros? Where's Osaka? Osaka is right here. We have 1 heavy industry disabled, and Yokohama, 1 heavy industry disabled. So now we're also going to look at tracker and notice a couple things here. So currently, as of turn 1, we're producing 24,275 supply, and let's see here, 13,900 heavy industry points. So this is on turn 1. So what I'm going to do then is run this turn, and then we'll come back and we'll run tracker, and I will show you how it updates this stuff, okay? So just bear with me. I'm going to run this turn. I'm going to make it go fast, and we'll come back and see how everything worked here, just to show you that this stuff does work. I'll be back. Okay, so I've run the turn, and now let's take a look at just a few of the things that we messed with last turn. So we'll go back to the industry tab, and we'll look at Fukuoka, because we messed with the armaments there, right? Oh, look at that. It did not build. Well, this is good too. Remember how we turned off repair? Well, it didn't, see? So remember how I showed you how we screwed up and we put way too many armaments factories in Fukuoka, and I'm like, I didn't want to do that. I messed up. I already spent the money up front, but it is what it is. I can't fix that. But what I can fix here is I can not do this. So I turned it off, and as you see, it did not expand, right? Well, that's good. Let's look at Tokyo. Well, let's look at Tokyo and a couple other bases where we did some adjustments to heavy industry, right? Let me find heavy industry. Heavy industry. So remember at Tokyo, we went up 1, and there it is. It repaired it. It spent 1,000 supply, and we got our +1. Now you notice that our heavy industry points and supply points are up higher than they were before. Okay. Now we can also take a look at Yokohama. You'll see this has a parenthesis by it, right? We said they wanted to go up 1, but there's a problem. And here's the problem. The base did not have enough supply to make that correction, to make that adjustment. See how much supply is at the base? 9,227. That is not enough supply for it to repair. So it did not repair. So I'm glad that this happened this way, because it's showing you what happens if you don't make sure the base has enough supply to do what you want it to do. In this case, we wanted it to build up, and it did not because of that. All right. And then last thing we're going to look at is Osaka. And this one did repair. Remember, we went at +1. It had more than enough supply, and it expanded. Excellent. All right. So now that we realize that Yokohama did not, we can go fix this. So as you run your turn and you're looking at this, you're like, why didn't this? Oh, the supply. So you go to click on the base. You'll notice that the supply requested is only 2,800. What is 2,800 times 3? Well, I'll tell you, it's less than 10,000. So we need to click this button here and set it to something in excess of 10,000. I like to go a couple thousand above just to make sure we have a buffer, right? So we set it here. Next turn, it will attempt to do 3 times this by sourcing it from other bases. It will bring the supply above 10,000. It will fix that industry. If you look at Maebashi, we have 10,000 here. We asked for 12,000, but you know why it's not 12,000? Because at Maebashi, looking at the industry, right? We started expanding our Japanese aircraft production, so it went up 1. Remember, it was at 56. Now it's at 57, so that burned 1,000 supply right there. And then we also screwed up and messed with the Nate factory, and it's trying to fix our mistake now. So it did restore 1, but it cost another 1,000 supply to fix it. So that's where our 2,000 supply went when we should have had 12,000 at the base. We spent 2 during the turn to repair this industry, right? Cool. Well, I'm glad this worked out this way. You get to see how um, things work and how they don't work if you don't do it right. So the last thing I'm going to show you before I end this video is the tracker. So this is tracker for turn 1. You see down here 12/7, 1941. Well, we're currently in December 8th, 1941, so we need to run the tracker and see how things have changed here. So this is the industry chart. So when I go up here and hit run turn or return, oh, I know what I need to do. Watch this. We need to save our turn. See, it's still saved as 12/7. Okay, now we're on 12/8. Now we can run tracker. See, I'm really glad I'm making these mistakes because you guys are seeing how all this stuff should work. Check it now. I go up here, return. Look it, it's running its stuff. Watch this screen. Okay, did it update? Oh, it did. There it goes. So it didn't update live. Yeah, I had to click off and click back on the tab. But now do you see what changed? Let's take a look at this. So the supply went up from 24,275 to 24,279, which is showing you that this thing does in fact grab data from the game and it calculates daily. Okay, you see down here, heavy industry, it was at 6,950. Now it's at 6,952, and it's showing that we have one disabled, remember, because we didn't have enough supply at Yokohama. So there, this is working as well. Also take a look at our heavy industry points, our plus or minus. It was in the low 2600s before, right? Well, now it's calculating, now that we have 2 additional heavy industry working per turn, this is going to be our surplus per month. It went up quite a bit because we're adding an additional 4 points of heavy industry per day that we did not have before. So tracker works great. This screen works great. I just showed you how it worked. So if you're not using tracker and you're a Japanese player, you are leaving so much information on the table and really shooting yourself in the foot unless you got some crazy awesome spreadsheet that I've never seen before. Tracker does it all for you and then some. It does so much more. And I have a video on how to use all this stuff in tracker in my tutorials. I'll put a link to the series in the video below so you can learn how to use tracker on its own. I'm just showing you one little snippet of what it can do, but you know, that's basically it. So I'm going to end this guide now because it's well over an hour, which is going against my principles of trying to make short tutorials. I just don't know how to do it on a topic like this. I left so much information on the table. There's more to know. So if you want to know more, ask your questions in the comment section or come over to my Discord and ask your questions directly and I'll get you more answers. And I'm also going to post in the comment section, or sorry, in the video description section, a really good forum post on the Matrix forums talking about like strategies and guides for Japanese industry expansion, production, things like that. I found a great forum post from a guy named Damien, who's one of the pioneers of Japanese industry production and understanding in this game. I'll put the forum post that he started with some spreadsheets that he made to help you as a new Japanese player maybe figure out how to run your industry better. The only thing I wanted to show you today was how it worked and how to do basic functions. The theory and the strategy is something for another video. So we can talk about that in the future. But I hope you understand how to do some basic functions today. And thank you so much for your support of my channel and me. We'll catch you on the next one.